You're supposed to be helping people, bro.
I just did. I said I'm about to go live now. Misty Fowler, how are you
All I
doing?
heard was wah, 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 wah.
Oh, LaDana, how are you? I'm just trying to get it on my computer now so I can look at some of the comments and stuff like that. I'm like doing it on my phone. The Contrarian HR, how are you doing? Usually would show up by now. Like Steve Worthy is live. So that way I can just get all of these. How are you? All right, we're going to have a good conversation today. And we want some audience participation. Did I? Oh, you pronounced my name right. Thank you. I'm a stickler for names. And making sure that I pronounce them correctly. Oh, there we go. All right. Let me turn my volume. All right. I think we are good to go. What's going on, Corey? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. And you?
Good.
You got me on here on a Sunday morning.
I know we've been trying. Everybody out there in the audience, we've been trying to get together to have this this conversation for a while now, and I'm not usually a last minute person. Maybe sometimes I am, and I think what did I text you? Did I text you last night? Or
it was in the afternoon or something like that.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
I was like, dude, let's do this. Let's do it live on why a leader should like either start a podcast or be a guest on the podcast. So we have a couple of thoughts that we're going to be sharing, like maybe 3 or 4 apiece. We'll see how long we got to go. And if you have any questions in the audience or anything like that, please don't hesitate to chime in and give us your thoughts. Corey, tell people who you are and what you do, man.
Excuse me. My name's Corey Gums. I am the founder of the Black Podcasters Association, online community. I should say a community because we're both online and in real life, as people say online.
Agreed.
Community for Black podcasters and professionals in the podcast industry. We do our 3 main focuses are support, which is creating a community where podcasters and people in the industry can come and help each other and support each other. Education. We do workshops, trainings, and then advocating for our collective voice as Black creators and professionals within the podcast industry. I'm also the founder of BlackPodNews.com, which is a newsletter right here on Substack. It is the only industry trade newsletter dedicated to Black podcasters and the whole sphere of Black content creation and podcasting within the industry. And I also sit on the board. I'm a sitting board member of Air Media, which is the Association of Independent Radio Producers. And our goal there is the same thing similar to Black Podcast Association, which is to support independent radio producers and podcasters, audio professionals in general, inside the respective industries. That organization has been around for over 35 years, so it's an honor to be sitting on that board. But that's some of the stuff that I do. I'll leave it at that.
What?
and I'm also here to annoy Steve when we're not on camera.
That's like your full-time job right there. That's your full-time job.
So my side gig.
Hey, Greg, how are you doing? For those who don't know me, I'm Steve Worthy, founder CEO Worthy Retail Global, and also I have the podcast Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, and the newsletter that's actually here on Substack, Worthy Retail Leadership. So as you can see, it's all about leadership. It is all about leadership. Hi, Diana. Hi, Candy. How are you both doing? Greg, I think I said hello, Greg. So we're going to have a good conversation. I couldn't think of a better person to have this conversation with about podcasting. One, because I remember when you were on Facebook, when the BPA was just on Facebook,
Oh, that's
and
not a Facebook. Okay.
outside of Facebook, when we first I think connected, it had to be like 2020, maybe
Yeah.
or something like that. And you were just, you won't say you were just starting, but you were building a community on Facebook, and I joined, and I just saw. I've been fortunate enough to be, sort of the person on the outside, but also maybe a little bit on the inside to see the growth and maturation of what you've been able to put together, man. So, kudos to everything that you've been doing, dude. I like I said, I'm in awe. We have a community called the Campus, and I borrow a lot of ideas from Corey and his community
Well, that's what
loosely.
community's for, right?
Loosely. Loosely. I can say that loosely.
You, I mean, when you joined, I was just starting. You wanted the OG, like you wanted the OG founding membership of the Black Podcast Association. So we just throw that out there. But yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just an
Mm,
idea, and I just acted on it. And so, like you were there, you've been there for throughout the whole journey. Actually, to be honest with you.
yeah, yeah. No, it's been dope to see that. To see it, get to where it's at and where it's going. And it's funny because today I posted on LinkedIn, but also I released my newsletter on Sundays. And today's topic was around your inner circle. It was around like how to have how to create and make sure that you establish a really, small, like, your inner circle needs to be small. Can be big. And I think throughout my career previously, until I learned this, I guess, I don't know if it's a rule or a perspective, years ago, was like, how do I make my inner circle, smaller and tighter? And those individuals who can, you know, um, talk stuff to me when it's right and even when it's wrong. And then I can actually add value to those individuals as well. So it's kind of cool to have somebody who's part of that inner circle, and having this conversation today. So pretty cool.
I appreciate it, man. That means a lot.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we're gonna part of this conversation was for us to, and I know it's funny when I said this, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk to Corey about starting a podcast. I said, I know his first statement is gonna be like, don't start one. Um that's funny. I was like, I know I'm gonna tee it up for him, but I don't care because I know that's what he's gonna say initially. So we want to talk a little bit about, from a leadership perspective, leaders who out there in the industry who are thinking about starting a podcast or trying to be a guest on a podcast. So we have our own thoughts and perspectives. So Corey, I'm gonna let you go first and give me your initial point that we're gonna probably be making.
Um, from a leadership, if you want to start a podcast, I think it's one of the best platforms for you to use as a vehicle for your thought, to be a thought leader, to express and train people, or to share information with people on how you see certain topics and areas with your perspective. Um, I mean, I have a whole bunch of data here that I was researching before I got on here,
Go
but
ahead, man. Hit
I
us
think
with some
I
of that
think the
data.
biggest one I think the biggest one is that podcasts build trust and brand equity, right? So I think from the leadership point of view, especially if you're trying to put yourself out there publicly and build your brand, um, it's one of the I won't say easy, it's one of the fastest ways to build trust with a particular audience that you may be targeting, and to get them engaged. It says here 68% more are more willing to consider a brand after hearing it on a podcast. So,
Hmm, hmm.
and that's not just a brand of a company, it's you as a person as well. Your listeners have an instant connect, I won't say instant because sometimes it takes a little while, but if you're successful enough to have repeat listeners, you're building a bond with those listeners. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the, and as we know in leadership, that's one of the biggest hurdles you got to get over is the connection you make with those that you're leading. So I think for me, if I was going to say one thing of why you should do it, that should be the main reason why.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I started podcasting 2007. with a good buddy of mine, Jerry. Gerald was Jerry's from Queens, Brooklyn. I think he's from Brooklyn. But we were both living in Atlanta actually at this time as well. And we were doing things around how do you balance? And it was called Buy Husband. No, it's called For Husbands Buy Husbands. And Corey already knows this because I told him how I bet FUBU, that For Us Buy Us, a moniker. And I took that and I said, For Husbands Buy Husbands, and we were teaching husbands at that time how to balance being a husband and also being an entrepreneur. And um, what we were initially doing, we were doing this thing called Blog Talk Radio. So I don't know if anybody, I'm probably dating myself, but and then a good friend of ours told us about podcasting. We didn't even know about like that, that platform, that mechanism. We were just doing Blog Talk Radio, and so what we ended up doing was taking the recordings from that and then uploading them to RSS feeds and da 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 da. And then we started to call ourselves podcasters, and then we started once platforms started to come on board with it, then we moved over to different platforms, Apple and all that other stuff. And it was interesting because I think and this goes for some of the leaders out there, when we started, we just wanted to share like our journey. We didn't have all the answers to what we were trying to do, what we were talking about at that time. And I think maybe that's probably my first point, and maybe it's a sub point of yours, is that, when you're trying to do this, I think part of it, of the appeal for a lot of people to listen to a podcast is that they want to feel like they're a part of your journey. They want to feel like they're a part of your growth and what you're doing in the space or whatever discipline that you're doing. So I think part of maybe thinking about doing a podcast is that there are people that are out there, they're looking for answers. You may not have all the answers, and that's okay. But at least you're actually out there setting an example and just allowing people to be, with you on that journey. So I don't know if does that resonate with you, Corey, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's another point. Transparency, right? I think
Yeah.
because a lot of the other mediums of entertainment and communication are so polished, I think the beauty of podcasting, especially for independent podcasters, is you can it needs to have some sort of professionalism, like clean audio,
Agreed.
stuff like that, right? But you can be you, and you can be transparent about who you are as a person, as a leader, or whatever it is, whatever brand you're trying to put out there. You can be you, and people are more willing to accept it in that space than maybe if you were on TV or on radio or in music or movies or whatever. So I think that's that. I think that's the part that a lot of people are starting to miss because they see so many well polished podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But those podcasts that really connect and resonate and really build a true fan base are the ones where people are being transparent, to being themselves. They're communicating in a way that fits for them, and then the listener chooses whether that's what they like or what they don't like. So I think transparency, which it's always amazing to me because I know like people do like scripts and stuff, and I'm like,
yeah,
but that's who they are, so I don't knock it. But I'm like, how can I get to really know who you are as a person?
Yeah.
If everything is completely controlled, right? I think there has to be a little wiggle room in those conversations. But whatever works for the people, that might work for their audience. So I don't knock it, right? So
Yeah.
it's just for me personally, I admire it because I'm like, I can't do it. I just need a outline and let's just talk, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the good part. The transparency aspect of podcasting is what really connects people, keeps people coming back and listening to the host that they choose to listen to.
Yeah. I'm not a script person either, man. We're not anti-script. Okay, not that there's anything wrong with that.
No,
Into my whole Seinfeld episode thingy. But yeah, when I first started, we were just, and I still the same way till today, is that Jerry and I were just having a conversation. We had an outline, and we would talk about that outline. We had a goal, and I don't think we ever thought about like scripting anything out, other than maybe the questions, of course, that we had for our guests that would call in at that time, right? Because this was a call-in show, and I think over time, and this is for anybody out there that's listening to this, that's thinking about, starting a podcast. You're going to mess up a lot. You're going to mess up a lot, and that's okay. And I think we realized that was the human part of of um of doing this podcast, doing a podcast, was that people get to see that side of you that others don't, right? Because you may be super polished at work, presenting and things like that, but when you get on this mic, it's a big responsibility, and I'm not saying that lightly, right? I'm not saying that lightly. It's a massive responsibility to get on here and actually be transparent and talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about, man. What do you think?
I think I don't care who you are, from Joe Rogan all the way down. Unless you've already had like years of media training and stuff like that. But even some of our even our favorite stars, that have been in entertainment for a long time. If you look at when they first started to where they're at now in their podcasting journey,
Mm-hmm.
you can see the improvement. You can
100%.
see the actual growth or them getting better, right? I'll use Drink Champs.
Oh,
I mean,
oh, yeah.
Nori
No,
still, Nori still cuts people off and when they're making points.
great example.
However, they started in a hotel room with a bunch of microphones, and now look at
Yeah.
them there in studio. They have a studio, all of that stuff. So, uh, you know, so I take like, I say like you look at people's journey and then you can see the growth. So, and I think that's part of it, right? Is the transparency part of it? Is your fans? I think I found that podcast listeners are a little bit more willing to ride it out with you, right? You can
Mm,
have a bad camera, bad audio, and if they really like your show, they like you as a host, they will ride it out and they will support you. And I think for some podcasters, I think they make the mistake of abusing that and not
mm,
focusing building it towards like improving their equipment, improving their
yeah.
show, improving their skill set. Um, but I think it's practice. Like Allen
Mhm,
Iverson, it's
mhm.
practice, right? Like it's repetition. You gotta keep doing it. You gotta do it. When I first started doing the live streams, Steve, I think you was one of the first live streams I did.
Yeah,
Um, from when I was started hosting it inside of our Facebook group, it was the worst thing ever for me talking up on a panel. I don't like public speaking. Like
yeah.
all these different things that I've had to do in the capacity of what I'm doing now is like how I am now. And I know there's still room for improvement, but
Mhm, mhm.
compared to what I was a couple of years ago when I started doing stuff like this, I've grown so much. And I personally like to go watch my old stuff to see where I
Yeah,
can still work on and fix things. But I
yeah,
think the transparency part, and the acceptance of the audience to grow with you and to move with you. A lot of people like being on the ground floor, and I think with podcasting, a lot of people get the opportunity to be on the
yeah.
ground floor of a brand building up, or being a part of somebody's journey.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you're talking about. Like I'm a part of the process. And those podcasters who really know how to bring their audience in, especially in the leadership space, you already, if you have leadership skills, you already know how to bring people in. I
Mhm.
think that's where the benefit comes in for leaders, is learning to bring people in to how to bring them a part of the thing where whatever the mission is to get to that mission, that to fulfill that mission.
Yeah, yeah. I still have my, so when Jerry and I, when we did our podcast from 2007 to 2012, I think, and then I started back up in 2017. And I remember when I was thinking about audio equipment. I was like, what mic should I get? And I still have it. It's the Rode NT USB mic. And I remember I used to get up early Saturday mornings and I would record in the basement. And because before everybody got up, and I would record in the basement. And I remember that thing picked up so much noise because it's a condenser mic. I didn't know. I didn't realize, what the differences were. I still had to educate myself. And I remember it picked up so much noise, but man, I didn't care initially because I was just doing the thing. And I think part of that process was like I got excited about sharing, my journey over time. And I think if once you get started with doing something like podcasting, you'll get excited about sharing your journey, like your mistakes, your ideas, your wins, your successes, all of those different things, man. So what's your second point, man? I want to make sure we get to the points that we want to cover.
Um, I thought this was an interesting one, and this is from a number of sources, but Lower Street is one of the top sources that I got it from. Um, a lot of professional people listen to podcasts, as we know, right?
Hmm.
C-suite and decision makers are listening. 83% of senior executives listen to podcasts weekly.
Yeah.
So, if you're trying to start a leadership podcast, you're targeting those people that are in leadership positions. And since a lot of them consume podcasts, your audience is there. That's where you want to. That's where you want to reach them. I think 83% is a pretty high number. Some people might say it's competitive. Uh, I will say I think it's almost 5 million podcasts now. Don't quote me on this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Somewhere around there, and only
Hmm.
about 15% of those podcasts are actually active, meaning
Yeah.
within the past, I think 30 days or 6 months, 6 months, one of those stats that they've actually posted a new episode. So even though it may seem like there's a lot of competition there, it's not. And you want to make sure that when you're thinking of your podcast, maybe you're trying to find a gap to fill, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something lacking in your competitors in those competitive podcasts that you could offer. You always got to remember, we all, like I learned this in music, right? People see something successful, they want to copy it.
Right.
And I think it's the person that decides that says, "I see what you guys are doing. Okay, it's working for you, but I want to add my own spin to this. So I want to present this in a different way." I think that's the other thing. The beautiful thing about podcasting is I always tell people there's not a right way. There's a right way. There's a foundational portion of podcasting, right? Like
Hmm.
no matter what you're doing, audio works a certain way, right?
Hmm.
Video works a certain way, lighting works a certain way. So you have to follow those fundamentals so that you can put out the best product. However, your show is your show, and how you decide you want to shape it, create it,
Yes. Yes.
disseminate information. Whether people agree with it, there's some shows that I don't agree with, but that's their
Yeah.
show, and that's for their audience. So you can shape you can do that too. But for a lot of people in a leadership position who want to put their thoughts out there, want to train, use this as a tool to educate, your audience is there. You know, I used to know the data for like who like the demographics. It's like high income earners,
Right. Right.
certain age groups and all that stuff. I haven't brushed up on that the past couple of months, but um you can find that data for like Edison Research, Signal Hill Insights, Sounds Profitable is another good resource if
Hmm.
you want to do some research on like podcast listenership and then ad revenue and all that stuff.
Yeah. That's a good point about doing some research up front. And I would recommend it, but I would say don't get lost in it.
Well, that's why I
Because
tell you started
yeah.
it off. That's why I tell people don't start a podcast because most of the people I engage, they didn't really they got they got bad data. As one
Hmm.
of my
Hmm.
UX friends used to always say to me, it's bad data. Everybody around you is like, oh, you should start a podcast. That's cool, but they're not your audience. Right.
Yeah.
And you learn that lesson real fast and real hard when you do launch it. Now all of a sudden those same people are the ones that are listening or support
Yo.
or quote unquote supporting you, right?
Yeah.
But you want to do some research and try to understand like at least who your target audience is. And I do agree with you. You don't want to go get too deep into research because then you get paralysis analysis, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you do want to have at least a decent idea of who you're talking to, who you want to target. And I usually typically like to work. I'm an engineer at heart, so I like
Hmm.
to reverse engineer things. So I decide this is the goal of the podcast, and I always ask my clients this question: like, if somebody was to listen to all your episodes,
Hmm.
right? Like, let's say you had 100 episodes. If I listen to every single one of your episodes, at the end of those 100 episodes, what should that person be walking away with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And by answering that question, you can reverse engineer, and then you make sure that you create a mission statement. You create the fail safes, core values, whatever it is that you operate, to always keep you in alignment of that content, so you could take the person on this journey. So, um, you know, I started learning a lot from UX, like UX research and UX
Mm-hmm.
design. Like incorporating other industries and bringing them into what I'm doing as well, and helping me to really help my clients and help my community become better at what they do. But I do think like I'll leave it at that point because I've
Yeah.
been talking about
No,
it.
no, no. That's such a good point about user experience, right? Just
Yeah, it's a
right,
listener
right.
experience.
It's
It's the
yeah, it's a
same
listener.
thing.
It's exactly. It's the same thing, and a lot of people don't understand that aspect of it. So So a funny story though. So when I got back into podcasting, I started out and it was called The Worthy Podcast. Right. I feel like I had a pretty decent last name. And it was about leadership, executive coaching, and diversity. Three super broad topics. And I was like, okay, but I got to start. So I started it, and then content was pretty good, and I ended up getting a podcast coach because anybody who knows me, I'm a big fan of coaching. Period. And Charlie Valher, guy over in Australia, he and I met. He listened to all my episodes and things like that. He said, "Steve, your content is really good, but I think you got the wrong audience." And so he said, "I did some research on you. Tell me about your retail background." I said, "Dude, I don't want to do no podcast on retail, man. I don't want to do no podcast on retail. There's enough of those things out there, man." And he said, "Just humor me. Tell me, about it." So I walked him through it all. He said, "Okay, next session, I need you to come with 13. Just give me 13 topics, just 13, because anybody probably who knows within podcasting, that's pretty much a season, right?" And so I said, "Okay, fine." Corey, you know the story or not? I don't know if I told you the story. You know the story. Yeah, you know the story. You know the story. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. You know the story. That's true. Very true. Very true. And so I didn't come back with 13. I came back with 40. I came back with 40 topics around retail, but more importantly, around retail leadership and in perfect coaching fashion. After I'm talking to Charlie, he said, "So what are you going to do about it?" I was like, "Okay." So what I'm going to do about it? He said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "Okay, I guess I'm going to be starting a podcast on retail leadership." I'm telling you what, it was like the sky parted, the angels started singing, everything. I knew I had landed on exactly what I wanted to talk about. And I changed up everything. I changed up the entire business model. We were Worthy Leadership Group, and then I switched over to Worthy Retail Leadership. We were The Worthy Podcast. I switched it up to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. Everything, and it just all made sense. And it just all made sense. And so I'm not, my story is different than other people's stories around finding that thing that I could talk about retail leadership all day long. It doesn't even matter. Corey, you know this, and it just doesn't matter. So I think finding your niche in which you want to talk about, sometimes it's right there in front of your face. Like, he's the one that had to bring it out of me. He's like, "Dude, talk to me about retail leadership." I want to talk about retail leadership. And that's what he did. There you go.
There's something powerful about those words. What are you going to do about it? Because that's how I started the community. I was bitching and complaining about like just how, my impression of like the pushback I was seeing that people of color were getting in some of these Facebook groups pre-COVID. And a friend of mine was like, "So start your own." And you see, I use the Michael Jordan thing. I took it personally because I'm very competitive. I take
Yeah.
you challenge, you push back on me. I'm going to take it. My competitive side's going to come out, and that's what I did. And the funny part is, look where we're at now, right? Like, I didn't.
Yeah.
If you told me 5 years ago I would be running a community, like that's not what I wanted to do. It
Right.
was, and like you said, it's sitting in front of you, but it was a natural thing for me, right? Like, just the education. Like I was really, Steve being there, I was really big on the education part.
Yeah.
And being in it, really wanting to educate people automatically puts you into a leadership position, whether you like it or not. So it's like you kind of fight against it sometimes. And I know, and I probably for you, I probably get it. Like you probably wanted to get away from retail because you've been working in it and you just probably tired of it, but not realizing that a lot of what you've learned was in,
Mm.
a lot of what you had was in there. It's just finding the vehicle and how to communicate it without it being retail,
Yeah.
without it being that job that you're trying to get away from, right? So like, I worked in the developmental disabilities field and psych field for over 15 years, right? I try to stay away as far away from that as possible. I miss my people that I helped and everything, but that job takes a lot out of you, and it takes a very special person to do it. But part of what I learned in there is applied in what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
I can't, as much as I try to move away from it, it's still there.
Yeah.
So I think you make a good point. Like sometimes it is sitting in front of your face. I think the hard part is is figuring out how you want to use it and apply it
Yeah.
to what you
100%.
want to do.
100%. And I think the problem is that, and you and I both are, I think we have the same opinion about trends, right? Not chasing trends, right? Because
Right.
or the things that are, and it's hard. I'm just gonna be. It's hard not to, and when you are doing a podcast, it's hard not to talk about a certain trend within your industry. Like so, AI, right? AI within the retail space, supply chain, and all these other things, and all customer experience, right? All these different things. I don't talk about. I don't talk about it. I, in the AI piece or certain other things, I may talk about it in the context of like, how do you lead through that, right? Or how do you lead this initiative, right? It's something in the context around the person, and what they've learned about themselves, and then what they can share. It's not so much the actual topic per se, it's how do you lead through something, through whatever this is that we're talking about? Because listen to me. Can I talk about customer experience, logistics, and all that stuff all day long? 100%. But that's not where my passion is. My passion is for helping those leaders lead through those experiences, those initiatives, those projects, or whatever it may be. Because that's the most important part. It's not the project; it's the leadership and how they're going to handle that process. So that's so it's important that you do find your your niche and try not to move away from it. I know it's hard. I know it's hard because the powers that be will tell you to you need to be talking about this and then all of this, and some of your favorite podcasters will be dipping and dabbing into different topics, and you're like, well, I can do that too. I don't know if you have enough cachet to be able to hold on for that long for that long period of time.
Oh, you want to be the trendsetter, not the trend follower. You want to be
Mhm.
the one. You got to be ahead of. You got to be a couple of steps ahead of the game. Or and Steve knows me very well. And a lot of people, there's a couple people on here who deal interact with me behind the scenes. They know I could be quite the contrarian and quite
You?
the opposite of whatever. Yeah, so and but a lot of people don't understand that's part of the engineer side of me is I look at gaps, I look for things that are wrong, I look for
Love it.
where the weaknesses are at. I look at what other people are doing and what they're not doing, and I try to say, okay, where can I find my lane in here? What comes naturally to me to help me find my lane in this, right? So, and the beautiful part of of being in this process and running a community is I had a conversation with one of my members yesterday, just to talk to him about his YouTube strategy, and
Mm.
2 hours later he gave I gave him an idea, and I was like, "Hold on, like, that I need to be doing this."
Oh,
Right?
100%.
And then I reached out on the text messages, shout out to Michelle Jackson, that was the one I don't know if she's still on here, but I saw her pop in, and she said a couple things earlier. And that it caused me to send a text message to some writers I know, like, "Hey, how do you start writing?" Because I'm not a writer like that. So, but I know
Mm,
I know the way to get that what I wanted to do off the ground, there needs to be a writing component to it.
mm,
Um, so I was like, man, and it was a kick in the butt. But I try to when I talk to people and I listen to what they're doing, and it's just the way my brain works. I'm always like trying, like, how can we do things differently?
mm,
How can you
mm,
present this different? Maybe you can't. Maybe you do need to ride some of these trends in the wave that
mm,
some people are on. I always caution people on following trends because lit- uh, mathematically, you just can't maintain it.
yeah, right, right,
Right. And the thing about, and remember I said earlier, you create a bond with your audience. They are there for what you're offering them at that moment. Like, they're gonna
yeah,
grow with you. You're gonna grow as a content creator and as a podcaster. You grow, you get better at it, your topics change, whatever. But a lot of them are growing with you, right? And especially if they've been there from the beginning, right? Like we've been talking. You were there from one of the beginning
yeah,
stages. You've grown with me as long as I've grown, right? As well as I've grown and doing what I'm doing. And then some people are they're gonna fall off because that's not what they're there for. But if you're following trends, you're keeping there's no stability with your audience,
yeah,
and then you're gonna drive yourself mad. So so when you're seeing people in the niche that you're in doing certain things, um, if it works for you, it works for you. Cool, but just understand if
mhm,
you're constantly trying to catch up with the latest trend, you're gonna burn yourself out.
yeah,
The most important thing with podcasting is to build your brand and build a product that people enjoy consuming, that keeps them engaged, keeps them entertained. whether it's education or not, there's some form of entertainment there for them because or value, I should say value. They're getting some value from it. That's what you should really be focusing on. And if you happen to ride on one of those trends, that's cool, but don't rely on it.
Yeah, you see value. I was thinking back to the Clubhouse days. That word was just so
Oh yeah.
if you're getting
I
value,
mean,
if you're getting value, I
that's a
know.
trend, right? Like you hear people using words, and we start using these words and stuff. But that's the only word I could think of right now that really expresses like
No,
what
it's
it means to
perfect. It's
somebody.
perfect.
It is value, but
Yeah,
yeah, it becomes there's a lot of words people uh, run into the ground.
yeah.
Like
Oh
energy is
man,
one of those. Those are a trigger
energy,
word for me. It's a trigger
energy.
word for me. To a point where one of my ex girlfriends used to always say it to me because she knew it would just send me over the
Oh
edge.
my gosh. Oh, now I know what to text you like later on today.
There's times when you've done it, and I'm like, should roll my eyes and just put my phone down and keep y'all on pause for a few minutes.
um, my second, we've been talking, which is good. That's okay. Once again, if anybody has a question or comment, please go ahead and put it in the chat. That's cool. We will definitely get to it. My second point I think I wanted to make was that and I had to learn this, um, from my second stint in doing my podcast. It wasn't really from my first one, and was that your listeners, if you think about your listeners or your audience, like they're on a journey in their career, right? From whatever point A to point B, and whatever that is. I don't know what that could be. But your podcast, and you have to think, and this is how I realized I was actually a little more focused in my delivery and what I wanted to do was that I was hitting leaders within the retail space at a very specific point in their career where they are questioning who they are as a leader. They want more, but they don't know how to get it. They're striving for a change in their leadership, quotient, self awareness. They're at a very specific point. There are these unspoken challenges and things that they're dealing with, and they don't know exactly how to articulate it or how to move through them. So I'm hitting people at a very specific point in their career. And then once I give them enough insights and information, they may move on to another podcast that may be for C-suite or above. And I'm okay. I had to be okay with that, right? I knew that my listeners are going to be with me for a very specific point in time within their career, and then they're going to move on, and that's okay. And I think we have to understand that, like, you're not going to keep your honestly, if they still stay with me for 5 or 6 years, I feel like I'm stagnant. Am I saying the same thing over and over again? And then they're not actually growing or moving? I think about that, in the personal side as a leader, right? And the people I coach. Like if they're not moving, whether it's up the ladder or from a mentality standpoint, what am I giving them? How am I helping them move forward? So that was something I had to learn in my journey was that I am reaching a very specific audience at a very specific point in time in their career. And once they're sort of done with listening to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, they're going to move on to something else. And I'm okay with that.
I think for you though, you got to also recognize the fact that even if they do stay with you, maybe there's been some growth in the content and what you
True.
talk and
True.
in there too. So though you may be there for a person's specific moment or a specific portion of their, with their journey, that actually as you're growing, that's also a specific portion of their journey as well. So I mean, like for me, that you've heard me say this, like with the BPA, like the way I think about bringing tools to the BPA and even the newsletter is I don't want you to be in the same position you were when you joined us. A year
Right.
from now,
Right.
that's what I always
Right.
ask myself. A year from now, where should these people be? Right. And I do,
Mhm.
and I say that to you because I am the same way. Like, okay, like I see some members and I'm like, okay, it seems like you're still in the same position, but I have to also stop myself and realize that maybe they're not, and that they're here and that they're getting what they need to get from this, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's just the community aspect, whether it's just the education. Um, and I think as leaders, we have to sometimes stop ourselves. I mean, when I first started the Facebook community, you guys, as you guys just always joke around, you go to bed at night, I'm on here, and then you wake up in the morning, I'm on here. Like,
Yeah.
when do you sleep? That used to be the running joke. Still is at times, but when that, and it was because in my mind, I thought I was trying, and my area of frustration was I was trying to force things in this group because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm,
So I thought I had an idea of what I thought they wanted, and I think this goes into a lot of podcasters and their content creation process as well. Which is why I always recommend people have feedback loops and engage their audience in feedback. Um, but I was pushing, and I would get frustrated because I wasn't didn't get. I was like, "This was such a great question. Why nobody, why is nobody giving answering it? Why is it just sitting here?"
hmm hmm
And I had to stop myself. And when I learned that you have to let this just evolve, like give people the space to let this evolve into what it needs to be for them, that's when engagement took off, right? That having those conversations in the comment section, and then it got to a point where I didn't have to do anything anymore. I just had to make sure I was there to keep it within the bounds of whatever the vision is, and allow the community to become. The community basically became its own living organism, right? It took a life of its own,
mm,
and I just it's my goal is just to nurture it and just keep it within the confines of what the whole purpose of what we're doing. So, and I think sometimes with podcasting, we get caught up in these little silos, because podcasting is a very lonely, very siloed space,
yeah.
right? A lot of times a lot of times, even though you're talking to an audience, you're talking to yourself. You're looking at the camera,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're in a room by yourself, you're talking to yourself, and you're doing it so much, you spend a lot of time and hours behind these microphones in front of these cameras, and in your little area that you might have created, your studio, whatever this space that you're in, that it becomes a silo. And sometimes you forget that, you have to create a space for your audience to engage, for you to engage, and I guess stop and smell the roses, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a hard part when you're in the creative process because you're
Mm,
putting a lot of yourself into it. You're very, laser focused on it, and and it's something of meaning to you. So I think like what you were saying, like sometimes you do have to recognize that, yeah, these people may be in a space with you, and you might be wondering why they're still here, but they have their reasons.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're still serving them. I think when they leave, sometimes I think when they leave, it might be a warning sign.
Mm, mm.
So it's hard to tell because everybody has, so there has to be some kind of feedback loop or exit interview or something like that in the process of what you're doing, so you can get the data so that to make sure that you're not telling yourself the wrong thing or you're not reading the room wrong.
Yeah. 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 Or that, or that you have plateaued, right? I think for me, I think, well, for any leader that's out there, I I I would test I would test and think about, like, every conversation or some of the next conversations that you're having, and and think about, have you grown in, how you are providing advice, how you are, um, you know, thinking about, a certain point. I said this to say it's because probably about, 10 years ago, maybe 12, I was having a conversation with someone, and I realized, was like, "Man, hold up for a second. I'm, like, saying the same thing that I've said, like, maybe 5 years ago." And I personally realized that I had probably hit a plateau in my leadership, and what it was that I needed to offer, and so I went on this deep, um, sort of growth process of, reading more, listening more, challenging myself, talking to, getting a coach, all those different things in order for me to continue to grow. So I'm saying that to say is that as you think about, um, where you are when you're starting a podcast, I always talk about it in the context when I'm talking to people with coaching, I talk about margin in your life, right? How are you creating margin in your life? Most leaders they're up against a wall because they haven't created that space in their life for them to receive new information, new insights, to understand, learn, articulate it, see how this actually applies to their life, and then give some of that away. So right, that you have to give some of the stuff away. And I think it's the same thing when you think about, podcasting. It's how much more are you able to take in and give out? Because if you just continue to run up against, that wall, then I don't necessarily think you're growing, and then your audience is going to grow. So you always have to continue to challenge yourself for newer and better heights.
Yeah. I think people sometimes forget leadership is a symbiotic relationship. You give
Mm,
and you take. And I'm always and it's training, right? You got to be, you can be trained. You can be trained on up to a certain point on certain things about leadership, right? Some
yeah,
of it is a characteristic of a person, whatever the experience and trauma they may have been through growing up through life as well, influences, or it's a
true.
whole nuanced thing. But one of the things running this Facebook community, I mean, my community, and just creating relationships and friendships, and talk about inner circles. I have very diverse inner circles.
Hmm, hmm.
I have multiple for somebody who like me, who's very loyal, and I have multiple inner circles.
Hmm.
And a lot of them interconnect with each other as well. But um, that I think that helped me grow as a leadership in this space, having multiple different perspectives,
Yeah.
go aligning with people who I normally probably wouldn't have aligned with if I wasn't in this space.
Mm,
Helps also, gives you that growth. But I think the biggest thing is you gotta know when to take and you gotta know when to give. You gotta know when to be stubborn and to stand fast. You gotta know when to say, okay, you know what? Because I personally I think leadership is empowering people.
mm.
It makes my life easier. Like you hear me telling me all the time, tell the community.
Yeah,
Like I learned giving ownership to the community, took some responsibility off of me and put it on the community,
yeah, yeah.
and in turn it turned them into leaders of that community versus me just being, ruling with an iron fist, and trying to force things that probably won't force, that I shouldn't be forcing. And I think in podcasting, especially if you're going to do leadership stuff, I think figuring out a way to give your listenership ownership over the podcast, which is why I
Yeah,
like feedback loops, which is why I like
yeah.
saying, hey, what did you think about this episode? Sometimes as simple as that. What did you think about this episode? What topics would you like to hear me talk about? Who would you, who would you like to hear me if you're doing interviews, or whose story would you like me to talk about? Depending
Mhm,
on what you're doing with your content. I think another thing is just shouting those people out that do give feedback.
mhm.
That's a form of recognition. Like we learned, like I know you learned this in retail. I learned this as a manager in a group home. Sometimes saying good job or recognizing, even if it's a small thing that people do, sends it does so way more connecting people to you and your leadership than just being like, "Oh, yeah, thank you."
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw you did this. That was great. Joe used to joke around. I used to have a supervisor. She would be like, what would WWMD? Her name was Martine. What would Martine do? I
yeah.
adopted that. Like he was like,
Yeah,
I did a Steve.
yeah,
I borrowed that and was like, what would Corey do? And I would always tell my staff, whatever Corey would do the opposite.
yeah.
Because because as you know,
Yeah,
Steve, Corey doesn't tend to spew in those gray areas and and spew in the lines sometimes as
no,
well.
really? Really?
But
No.
but I joke around with that, but it also creates a position for people to make decisions for themselves, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't want you to mimic me. I want to influence you, but I don't want you to mimic me. I want you to have your own mind, learn for yourself what you need to learn. So I would joke around, be like, yeah, what would Corey do? But and do the opposite.
yeah,
That causes you to think. So but I think and that's what I love about this podcasting space because there's so many different ways to do it and execute it,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and to get and communicate this information that you have to other people. And I think that's what people, especially in this day and age where people are getting with movies, they're getting tired of the nostalgia, the nostalgia
Yeah.
of redoing movies, and no new basically no new concepts in music, no new concepts in TV and in movies. They're looking for something fresh. They're looking for something different. They're looking for
Mhm,
something to engage in. So yes, so and so has the top 1% leadership podcast for whatever reason. And a lot
mhm,
of times they're paying bots and stuff, but that's a whole nother conversation. But
mm.
um uh that doesn't mean you have to be that person. You need to be you.
No.
Isn't it crazy hearing about leaders copying leaders? Like, is that
Yeah,
leadership? Like, come on, bro. Like,
yeah,
so I'll end it on that part.
yeah. Well, it's interesting though. You do copy like a leader up until a certain point in time where you get comfortable enough in your own skin. And I'll just say this in the context of like leadership, where there have been leaders that I've looked up to, John Maxwell, gosh, Bishop, just got Bishop Wellington Boone. Like there are certain people that I can pinpoint. When I lived here in Atlanta the first time, Pastor Dennis, who was at our church, and like how they carried themselves. And there were just certain aspects of who they were that I was like, ooh, I like that. But then I made it my own over time. So there isn't it's the same thing with podcasting, right? And you know this, Corey, too, right? I mean, I picked up so many different things from other podcasts that I like that I'm like, oh, I like that. I like how they did this. Oh, I like how they transitioned into that. I didn't do it all at once, but I kind of implemented certain things over time that if you listen to my podcast, you wouldn't even know where I got some of these ideas or how I present some things or whatever that may be. But I think I think it's okay, to think about what other people are doing, but you can't stay there. Right? You can't live there. That's not because then you're disingenuous. So over time, a couple of comments
Well, can
here.
I just make a point to
Yeah,
what you
go ahead,
said?
go ahead, go ahead.
Because I want to. There's some funny. So when you said that, you triggered something. I think people need to understand you're being influenced, not controlled. Like not
Yeah,
it's influence, right? You take bits and pieces and you turn it into you think you need to take it, consume it, analyze it, process it, and then to figure out how to make it your own. And the funny thing is I saw a video from one of my favorite movie composers, Hans Zimmer,
mm,
where he says, I don't make this is not my music. My
mm,
music, everything you hear in my music, the music that I create has an influence that comes from somewhere.
yeah, yeah,
And as Steve knows, he's been privy to being part of my music journey the past year. It's like every couple of weeks, I find myself being influenced by different music and putting it into my music. So I say all that to say is there's a difference between mimicking and copying and being
right,
influenced somebody. And in the content creation space, and I think success tends to blind people, or with their idea of success tends to blind people. They think they
mm,
have to do what other people are doing in order to be successful, instead of saying, what is this person doing and how can it influence me to do it in a way that I need to do it that works for me and the audience that I'm trying to reach?
yeah, 100%, 100%. LaDana said that she started Facebook Live and she was very shy at the beginning, but she's gotten confidence all of a sudden. What triggered that, LaDana, about the switch in confidence? I really wanna know because I don't think it's just from I don't wanna know. I think other people who have probably read that comment may wanna know too. That's
I
a
want to
poignant.
say it's not all of a sudden. It's
It's not.
repetition. You got the
Yeah.
reps in.
Yeah, but I don't
And that
answer. I want LaDana to answer. I want LaDana to answer, man. You don't give up the
she
answer.
probably has a different answer.
I know that. That's what I want her to answer, man. Just stop answering the questions, man. So that's how I gotta get Corey in line. Um, what does Walt say? I will say that's one thing I see you doing
Oh,
well. Yeah, yeah, that's
you,
you do that.
when I saw that comment, you know what I would say.
Yeah. No, you do that well, Corey. You do that well. I mean, I think once again, as seeing you when you were first in the Facebook group, right? And I think you had to have a measure of control at the very beginning, right? Because of what you were trying to create. But then I think once you started to realize it was like, this is bigger than me. I think you started to realize like, hold on for a second. Okay, I need to bring more people into this vision that I have, and more people bought into the vision, and then you were able to trust more people. So I completely agree with that. Completely agree with that, Walt. And then Michelle has a question. So she loves this conversation. Thank you, Michelle. And should people create an oh this is what Michelle, why did you ask this question? You
Michelle
could
did that on purpose.
she planted,
I
yes.
saw it. I
She
was like,
yes. Yes. She planted this one because I don't even know if Michelle knows me like that, but Corey and I share this sentiment um, very much. Corey more so than me. Um as soon as I started reading, I was like, oh, that's a trigger warning. Trigger warning. Um, okay, Corey, answer Michelle's
oh,
question.
you want me to answer?
Yeah,
You want me to
because
answer?
okay. No, yeah,
No,
you
I'll
answer.
answer it.
You
I'll
answer. Go
answer it.
ahead. Go ahead.
So this is a conundrum. It's over the past couple years, it's become a conundrum for me, right? There's the Corey opinion, and then there's the overarching podcast industry opinion, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is, I guess sometimes leadership too, right? You got to meet people where they're at, right?
True. True.
And that's the conflict for me, is because I've had to stop myself and say, video is here.
Right.
It's
Right.
not going to
Right.
go away.
Right.
And as
Right.
we just heard, like article came out on Bloomberg, Ashley Carmen, about the video on YouTube and how it's now for podcasting. It's taking the front row.
hmm
However, the data still shows that the podcast listeners
Yeah.
still prefer audio.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because people are doing audio podcasts while they're engaging in other activities. I can't drive and and watch a podcast.
Yeah.
I can't run and watch a podcast. I can't exercise and watch a podcast, but I can sure as hell listen to one.
Yeah.
So I can't clean up my house while watching a podcast. But most people are like me, where if something's on TV, you're going to stop and watch, especially if interest, you're going to stop, watch it, and now you're less productive. So video is here. I personally, podcasting at its roots is an audio format. I'm still trying to find this quote. I forgot the name of the director. I want to say it was Spielberg, but me, I love movies. I'm a
Yeah.
huge movie buff. So many people say without audio, a movie is nothing. Without sound, because even the silent films had music. There was an engaging part of it. So audio is always going to be the root. It's always going to be the foundation of this industry, no matter what. And then I'm going to age myself. I drink a lot of water, so I don't look my age. I got a couple grades, but I just got to throw that out there.
Yeah, you're
No,
old.
but for me, growing up in the '80s, when you add video, it's just a talk show.
Yeah.
Well, there's no difference between what you and Donahue and Sally Jeffrey Raphael and Ricky Lake and Oprah and all these people were doing. There's no difference. The only difference is the equipment is more affordable, and the distribution of it is easier now than it would have been 40 years ago, 30 years ago. So that's my opinion on the matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
But I
Yeah.
will say this, as if you're trying to get into space, I will say this too. Video requires more production. It takes more to produce the video component, and it's more expensive than it is to just do the audio. And this is going to burn me, but I'm going to say you can easily just get a mic, attach it to your phone, and you can record your audio that way.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
video, you got to get the cameras, you got to get the lighting, you got to, you can start off with certain things. You can even use your phone, but there's still a production value. And I think with audiences, there's an expectation that your video will get better over time, especially the more engagement you get. So I'll leave it at that. But I think you got to meet people where they're at. If you want to go video, that's fine. If that's a part of your strategy, cool. I'm not knocking it. But I think I will always going to say go audio first.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, because of when I started, it was audio first. And then when I restarted, I was like, I'm gonna do audio first. Been doing this thing for a long time, man. I've been doing this podcast thing for a long time. And I gotta tell you, for me, when I do a video podcast, typically is with a guest, right? I don't necessarily do a lot of can't really do like just an audio podcast with a guest. But when I do my audio alone, like just me, and I have a little podcast area in the closet, I got to tell you what, I'm a little more free. This is just me. When I'm in that little closet and I have my mic, and I have my iPad, and I have my talking points, there is something when I go in there, man, it's just something different. Just clicks in me. And I love when I'm just talking to the mic, because I feel like I'm just talking to one person. In video, there is a lot more things to do, right? There is a lot more showmanship, if you will. When you're just doing audio, there is a freedom that I feel you have more so than just than video. This is just my own personal experience. Like I said, I've been doing this for a while.
Steve doesn't Steve doesn't have to brush his teeth. You know, he doesn't have to shave. You
What's he
know,
talking? What is he? What are you
he
talking
just go
about?
in there, stick breath and all. Just
What are
talk.
you
You
talking
did not have to
about?
worry about anything.
What are you talking about? Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, I'm not even talking to you, man. I was trying to be super serious, and here you are. But no, I would agree. Like the audio pieces is first and foremost for me. I agree. To Cher's point, you know, nowadays, of course, when I do a guest podcast, of course, it's video, and the quality is still solid. But for me, when I'm just want to record something, there is nothing like just being in there solo. There, the ideas start to flow, the perspectives are different. You know, you're just in a zone. I have you. I don't know, if Corey, if you listen to a podcast and you can just tell, like, that person is sort of in the zone, like audio podcast. Like, they're just going, and they're just like, they're feeling the moment, and they're just in it. I know sounds very, very silly, but those moments happen when you are into your topic and you're like just going. I can feel it. I can hear it when I'm listening to certain podcasts. I'm like, oh, that person's in the zone. That person's in the zone. I know this sounds silly thinking about like Michael Jordan and basketball, but like there is sort of this podcast zone where you are just free and you're just going after it and you don't care. I know that it may sound silly, but for those who have experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
It's creative flow. It's a creative
Yeah.
flow. Like it's just like music or anything else, art, whatever. There's a creative aspect to it. Even writing, like you know, you get
Yeah.
into a flow. So that's what it is. I also just want to, for the sake of conversation on the video audio part, is we talk. You know, I talked about like you determine for yourself how you want to
Yeah.
execute this show. I do
Yeah.
think we cannot hide from the fact that there needs to be a video component to what you're doing. I know some people who their podcast is strictly audio only, but they record they'll use like a tool like Riverside where they
Mhm.
record the video and they'll use that behind the paywall or on their Patreon or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
And I think for anybody watching, like if you can mix it up if you want to. I think Rob Dunwood said this a long time ago in one of our conversations in the Facebook group, and I've always lived by this. He was like, the problem with monetization with podcasts is they always say, when I get to 1,000 downloads, then I'll start monetizing.
Yeah.
And then when you do it,
Yeah.
then you wonder why people are. And he's like, you train your audience. And I think that's the biggest part that I took from it is you train your audience. So whatever you train your audience to do in the beginning
Mm.
is what they're going to expect from you. So if you go video and you do like let's say you do one episode video, one episode audio. And here's the other thing. You could do video and pull the audio from that and turn it into an
100%.
audio podcast. I've
100%.
had people ask me some of these lives that I do, when are you going to turn it into a podcast? And I know I could just strip the audio and just make some edits and then just put it, as a podcast. I do what's best for your budget, best for the time, the energy, the capacity you have, and you decide how your show you decide how you want to execute your show. So don't let nobody tell you video. I'm going to tell you audio is always going to be important to me.
Mhm.
You can't get anywhere without the audio portion. But if you want to add video, if you want to go video only, that's your choice. There's a space for that. There's also space. This audio is not the audio only space is not dead, despite what people want to tell you.
Yeah.
And you got to be
Yeah.
careful about the information you get because there's a lot of people trying to be thought leaders in the podcast by riding these trends and waves by saying audio is dead or video is dead.
Yeah.
You decide for yourself how you want to do it and how you want to execute it for the audience. And this goes back to what you said earlier about researching your audience. If you know your audience that you're targeting is very YouTube centered, it would be against your own efforts to ignore the
Mhm.
video component, right?
Yeah.
If you know that your audience are runners and they like to listen to music and audio when they're working out, it wouldn't be in your best interest to ignore the audio aspect of your content. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out for yourself how you want to disseminate your information, what platforms, and get creative with it.
Mhm.
You don't have to abandon one for the other. Just understand the pros and the cons of them. Because I remember Steve start coining this term, GAS, right? Gear acquisition syndrome. Because like you see here, like you start acquiring things, and then it just sits there collecting dust because you don't use it all the time.
Mhm.
And it costs money. So I think I just want to leave it at that point. Like be real, like do a deep dive with yourself and what you have capacity for and how you want to execute it, and do what's best for you and your audience.
Yeah. I do want to talk, I do want to talk about two things. I do want to talk gear for a second. And then I do want to talk about, you hear something along the lines of like, um, how do I create content? I don't have any ideas. Where do I get ideas to create topics and all these other things? I want to talk about that as well. But the gear thing is a serious thing. I mean, Corey knows. It's a serious thing. Like when I first started, I told you I had the USD, the NT USB, the Rode NT USB. And when I first started back for the second time in 2017, I had and I would plug that right into my iPad, and I would use Audacity, and I would record audio right into it. Yeah, I know. And I would record right into it. And then after I set milestones for myself. I said, when I hit a certain number of downloads, then I actually bought a Rodecaster, like one of the first ones when it first came out. Then I hit another threshold, and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy a Shure SM7B. All these different things, right? And they cost money, but I set sort of thresholds for me from an achievement standpoint in order for me to get those things. I would probably say the same thing for anybody else that's out there, because it can be costly. And if you don't know how to use the equipment either, right? That's the other thing. There's a learning curve with all of these different things. But when you first started, what did you use when you first like started doing your like podcasting things?
Well, to be fair, I think like a lot of people, my background, being in studios and going to school for audio engineering when I was younger and all that stuff, I think I had a one up over a lot of people.
That's
who
true.
came into the
That's true.
space because I already had an extensive experience with audio. But my first iteration of my studio equipment that I purchased I still have it. I still use it. Was a simple Yamaha MG10X board that I got on sale at Guitar Center for like $150. Um, I got the first mics that I used were some Electro Voice CO9s. I got them for
Mm,
$50 each.
mhm.
Dynamic. You talked about condenser mics
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
That was a dynamic mic, and I would record in the back of my house, and I could hear the buses on the bus route going in the front of my house. So, like, sometimes even with dynamic mics, some are really good on their
Mm,
pickups. That was that. I will not get rid of those mics. Those are my backup mics, but because they're so good, I will always hold on to those mics. It's almost
yeah.
like having the SM58, like, that everybody uses,
Yeah.
for performances and stuff. But um, I started small. I started simple, and I said, because the idea I had when I got my first equipment was to have a mobile studio. I needed stuff that I could move, break down quick, move lightly, um, move really, that wasn't heavy. But that's how I started. I knew I needed a dynamic mic, and I knew I needed a decent interface. That was the main
Yeah.
concern I had.
Yeah. 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 And then
Something that I knew was reliable and would work all the time and not fail.
yeah. How about editing? I started initially I started editing my own podcast, and then I got tired of that, and I found somebody
Yeah.
to edit, my podcast. What are your thoughts about that?
Editing is valuable.
Learning it? You mean
You
initially
know,
the initial learning
no, it's
aspect of it.
just no, it's valuable,
Period.
period.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I did a lot of editing when I first started. That was how I made extra money. I don't I l- I don't like editing. It's very time consuming, but I was
Mhm.
really good at it.
Mhm.
I enjoyed putting things together, but it is an art form. It is a skill set. It is a talent for a lot of people. For many of us, we wear many hats, and when we get started, you can't, it can get expensive depending on
Mhm.
where you find
Mhm.
your editor and how you go about it. So yes, and I think also as a podcaster, I'm starting to think that maybe you should edit your podcast
Initially.
for as long as you can because it teaches you to respect the art form. It
Yes.
teaches you of editing, plus also, it teaches you you should be learning how to organize content, tell stories, usually to to really express, and then it gives you appreciation of the audio aspect of the science of audio, all that stuff of what you do. But it is a time consumer. I always tell clients, for every hour, it's going to be 2 to 3 hours of editing. So
Hmm.
that's one reason why it gets expensive because people have to, you have to pay people for their time. Now, I know some people who have like really good workflows, but they love editing, so they're really good at it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're passionate about it, so it's they become masters of their craft. So they might be able to cut that time in half. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I think editing is a very important process of putting out a polished product, right? You know, we look at retail, you notice at retail,
Hmm.
sometimes the packaging is the difference between whether product sells or not.
Yeah,
There's a science
yeah,
behind it. There's
yeah.
also a science to having it edit. Now, I don't think you need to do this like this crazy. Do you need to do an NPR style? Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
Mm.
But I think it's the same thing. It's like like I was saying earlier about your podcast. How you edit it, you got to figure out what's the feel you want it to have and
Yeah,
find the right person.
yeah.
Um, but editing is just another hat that a lot of independent podcasters wear. And I think the biggest challenge for podcasters is learning to find a balance between creating their content and then the post production aspect,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
'cause editing and cleanup is a part of, because they're both very time consuming and they both take a creative effort on your part. So you might be tapped out creatively on the podcast, and then you gotta go edit. You know,
Yeah.
so you might need to take a couple of days. And I think you have to figure out a workflow and a process that works for you to make sure you don't burn yourself out over that.
Yeah, because it is a time suck, man, with the editing. Um, yeah, I when I first started doing it, I fell in love with it. Like I was like, oh well, because this is part of the creative process and all of that, all of that. And then I realized like I'm spending too much time, doing this where I could spend, maybe two or 3 hours just recording 3 or 4 different episodes and then find somebody that can actually edit this, for me, right? So I can kick up my production and then have somebody just on the back end do the editing for me. And then now I've batched 4, 5, 6 different, episodes that I don't have to worry about, for like a month and a half now. So it all depends on what you want and how you actually want to produce this thing going forward. So
I mean,
before we get go ahead.
you got to remember too, delegation, right? That's part of
Yeah.
leadership. Something me. I knew this because I ran teams before, but even in the journey I'm on now, I still struggle sometimes to delegate because sometimes I don't know what I need to delegate. You got to look at editing when you hire an editor. You're delegating. You're not paying. You're delegating a task that makes you that you can get off your plate, so you can be more efficient and more effective on the
Hmm.
areas that you really need to be.
Hmm.
I also want to say, like, I'm gonna leave it at that. But there
Hmm.
was a question
Yeah.
that I wanted to add.
Go ahead.
I know you said her name right. How do you say it? I don't want to screw up
Ladana.
her name.
Ladana.
Ladana. Okay. Um, she said, "Are there fees for using podcast platforms for distribution? Usually there isn't. So like Apple, Spotify, some of the bigger ones, iHeart, whatever one you decide, which you should be really putting on all of them. But those are free. There is fees for hosting
Mhm,
services, and
mhm,
sometimes there are networks. There are no networks that will host your podcast, but some of them charge fees. You got to really do your research on networks and whether you're
mm,
paying into it or it's like a cooperative type of thing. You got to do your research on the business side of how they do it. But if it is a network that hosts it, usually they might charge you a fee or it comes out of the ad revenue, whatever the splits, whatever. So
yeah,
investigate that part. But usually to distribute your own podcast, like on Apple, Spotify, there isn't a fee, and you shouldn't be paying a fee unless you're paying somebody to take on that task for you.
mhm, and
So
most hosting platforms are set it up easily for you, right?
yeah,
This is not a sponsor, but, I've been using Buzzsprout for the longest. I know there are so many other ones. There's a ton of other one I mean, that the number of podcasting host companies it's ridiculous now. But I think I went with Buzzsprout, one because, um and I think the majority of them could say this too nowadays, is that, they had their own podcast and they were actual podcasters. The people at Buzzsprout. Once again, I think the majority of podcast hosting companies can say that as well. But from a technology standpoint, it was super easy. Um, very user friendly, all those different things, and they do charge. Also when you think about these podcast host companies, some of them will allow you to host some things for free, but if I'm not mistaken, that podcast will get deleted in like 90 days. So you gotta be careful what you're buying, and look at some of the look at the entire package, because you're like, oh, it's free, but that they may delete that podcast after 90 days or something along those lines. So just be careful about what you're looking for, from a podcasting hosting standpoint. Content. Let's talk about content. It's probably gonna be our last thing, because we've been on over an hour. But okay, let's talk a little about creating content, and let's just put it out there. Let's talk about the use of AI to help you create, content, because we're in this world nowadays that we cannot not talk about it, and um and I wanted to get your perspective on, how people can use it, why or if they should use it to create their content, and then we could talk about the authenticity side of the delivery of that content. That's a second part, but the first part, we want to talk about the creation of it.
I go and let me close my ChatGPT window right. uh, I don't know. I know been a report that came out either last week or the week before about the actual mental effects of using the cognitive effect of using people relying on
Hmm.
AI,
Hmm.
and how there's been a diminished cognitive ability on people because of it. Which I think when you do anything, right, there was a diminished when cars came out, there was a diminished physical effect of people walking everywhere, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
anytime a new tool that's introduced or technology is introduced to humanity, it changes our behaviors, changes how we do things.
Right. Right.
I don't have a horse in this race. I look at AI like a lot of, and I'm probably a little biased too. I write code too, so like, I'm
Hmm.
into this stuff. But um, getting to see all the sci-fi movies finally, the imagination of a kid and having conversations with my friend of what if we could do this coming into existence in my lifetime is like, wow, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
enjoy it. But from a content creating space, okay, share who remembers phone numbers? Why do you
Exactly.
need to remember a phone number?
Exactly.
Now I know the counter argument to that, but honestly, like, really, like, if I don't remember your phone number, I probably don't need to call you.
How
No,
calls a day do
but
you actually make on
I
your
think
phone
for
now?
content, I think AI is a tool, and I think the problem is how people see the tool instead,
Hmm.
like people using it for therapy, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I get it. I get why you might use it for therapy, but it's not therapy, right? It's just a tool. It. All right, here I'm gonna tell you from a programmer's point of view what I've been learning from my friend that works on this stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
I remember when I first started learning code, I was told computers are stupid, and people have a hard time understanding that. It just processes information faster than you can.
Yeah. Hmm.
But a computer and even AI at this point, it can't do anything unless you give it specific instructions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to always so when I look at it as a tool, I always remind myself that, yeah, this is impressive, but it would have never done this without me giving it instructions.
Yeah.
So and it's giving me instructions of what I'm asking it to give me. So it's kind of like it's kind of giving. It's not like me and you having a conversation and you just have a complete disagreement on my approach. And you're not AI is going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Even as much as I tell it to not do it, it still does it. I literally curse ChatGPT out every day. Like, that's not what I told you to do.
Hmm.
I need, I'm expecting from it what I'm expecting from a human. And the content creation space, for somebody like me, it's a wonderful tool because I'm being in a visionary space. You know, having the idea, coming with the idea, and then executing is two different. And I also have neurodivergence, so it's a little bit harder for me to bring it down to a certain point
Right.
where like what you see, where you just boom, 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 right? So this helps me a whole lot when I'm like, I have this idea, blah, blah, blah. Give me step by step how to execute it. Then on top of it, then for me, my responsibility is to take from it what I need to take from it and make it work for me and how I want to express it, right?
Mm-hmm.
My AI does not replace who I am and my thoughts on things. It supplements it, or it not supplements it. It coexists with me. I use it as a
Mm-hmm.
tool to help me figure out. Like when I said I was doing research, I went to AI. I was like, okay, gave it the instructions because I didn't have time to go to all these different websites and read all these PDFs and put everything together.
Yeah.
But I just made sure that I looked it up and I double checked it. So I think AI, if you're a lazy person on how you do things, I think AI makes you a little bit more lazier in certain
Mm,
aspects.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
but I look at it as a tool, and I think because content creation it's still a creative side to it. It's never going to replace that human creativeness.
Mhm, mhm.
Is that a word? That creative
Yeah.
side of being a human being. But it will help you to maybe sometimes rein it in, um, execute it in a way that you never did. Look
Mhm.
what CGI did for movies,
Yeah.
right? Like, me and you grew up in an era, when people talk about computers and conspiracies, I'd be like, did you not watch Last Starfighter? Did you not
Yeah,
watch,
exactly.
did you not watch, some of these shows like
The
you see
first
like
Terminator?
Tron? The Tron was so impressive because of how far CGI went, right? With the
Mm,
movie Tron.
yeah,
Everybody thought it was amazing,
yeah,
but nobody could do what they did with Tron. Nobody was willing to make the investment that they made with Tron. So, like, I say all this
exactly.
to say is, in the content creation space, it is a tool, and
Mhm.
and just like how you use any tool, you could use it for good, you could use it for bad.
Right.
So I think, I think, and it's not going anywhere.
Mm-mm,
So they
mm-mm.
also there's like the video part. It's not going. So there has to be a part of us where we have to decide. It's the evolution of the space we're in. You have to make a decision. Do I die on this hill and it may work for you? That's fine. Or do I move with the times and figure out how to make this tool? I may not like it. I may not always agree with the ethics, the stuff behind. But how do I make this tool work from what I'm trying to do? And the biggest thing is it's a time saver.
Yeah, yeah.
What might have taken you weeks to do. Look. I've been using it to help me write my course. And I always say, Steve always hears me talk about it. I'm like, man, if I had done this on my own, it'd probably take me 2 years to get this done.
Yeah,
But I got so
yeah.
much done in like 3 months of working on my course, which some people might hear that and be like, took you 3 months to use AI to work with. Yeah, because I am, I have a standard and I'm policing the work that is coming out of it.
Right.
And it has to be up to what I feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
Some of these people are using, okay, one of the things is AI replacing you as a host. Me being very audio sensitive, I could tell when I hear audio content that's using
Yeah,
AI,
yeah.
I could tell already.
100%,
It doesn't sound
100%.
to me. It doesn't sound human. It's not much better though.
It's got it's the worst
Even
it's
with like
gonna be.
ChatGPT 5,
It's the worst it's gonna
even with
be.
ChatGPT 5 talking to chat, because I talk to my ChatGPT a lot. It's easier than typing for me.
Mhm,
The
mhm,
conversation, I'm like, wow, this is significantly an improvement than what ChatGPT was 2 weeks ago for me. But
mhm,
it still sounds like AI to me, and it's gonna get better.
mhm.
It's going to improve, but will it replace you as a host? I personally think it's never going to replace that creative, like what you said,
Yeah,
when you get in that creative flow state and how you could just be hitting stuff on, it's too clean. It's like the digital versus analog and audio, right?
mhm.
People like hearing that record, they like hearing that dirty sound,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because it sounds more natural. It's more
Yeah,
natural
it's
than the
mistakes.
clean
It's
sound.
human. It's human. Yeah, when you were talking about you talked
You,
to the AI, I
you
just
know what
think
was
of
impressive?
go ahead, go ahead.
When I was talking to ChatGPT and it made a mistake, it tried to act like a human when it makes a mistake. It was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. And I was like, hold on, what y'all doing over here? Y'all better chill, like slow down, like, whoa, like,
Well, like I said, it's the worst. It's
kid.
it's the worst it's going to get. It is. I mean, we're working on our a an AI project that we're not talking too much about, but we're on the back end we're figuring out we've already figured out how to use multiple LLMs, right, within that process of like you have one that sort of creates the output and then the other one actually validates it, right? And so We can go in all types of different directions with with that process, but uh, it is about time. It is about it's about time saving, which it does, right? I was literally just thinking about when you were talking initially. I was like, I remember like writing all of my podcast descriptions, right? Based off of my notes, I would sit there and I would literally write out my podcast description around what this episode is about. Da, 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 da. Now I put it in there and I said, hey, write me a summary off of the audio of the podcast, and it pretty much it nails it. It nails it. Now I don't have to.
And then you make whatever tweaks you need to
I make
make.
whatever tweaks I need to make, right? And it's I mean, that's an hour, maybe even longer, right? Just depending on, especially if you have multiple episodes. So it is a time saver. I think and Sharon and I talk about this a lot, and it is about the delivery of who you are as a person, right? You can everybody's a thought leader now on LinkedIn, right? And we see it often, and now you can tell what's Chat GPT and what's not, and things along that line. I'm a strong proponent of whatever you put out there, written, audio, yada yada yada. If I meet you in person, I'm hoping to have the same experience that I do when I'm reading your stuff. And in a lot of cases I'm not, right?
That's
You
what
know,
authenticity is, right?
that's
Authenticity.
exactly.
It's a consistency. Yeah.
Exactly. And so now when I think about the fact that it can save me time, it saves me more time. I think about it in this context. It saves me more time so that I could be more of myself, if that makes sense. Right? I can actually put more effort into who I am and how I want to deliver this message, right? Because it's helped me, become more succinct with my thoughts or whatever it is that I may be trying to get out there. But I still have to deliver this message. I still have to deliver it, and I have to deliver. I can't deliver it like ChatGPT. I have to deliver it like Steve. I can't, present something on a stage, right? That if ChatGPT will help me with the points or whatever, I still have to deliver that thing. And so I think you have to make sure that you are who you say you are, right? There was a coach, I think that someone, I can't remember the coach that said that, football. He's like, you have to be who you say you are. And that's the most important part when I think about how do you differentiate, the chat GPT world and perspectives than for the human side of who you are and what you want to put out there, because you can see the difference. And so just make sure that if you're utilizing it, utilize it to save time, but use that time that you've gained to become and to distribute more of who you are. Hope that makes sense.
Look, ChatGPT will never be Corey, New York City aggressive Corey, right?
No,
It'll
no,
never be
Lord
that,
of
right?
mercy, God, can you imagine that? I can't
So,
imagine a world like that.
it'll never be, I like to steal everybody's thing, Steve, right? Like, so like, despite the fact that people say it does, like,
Hold on, man. I just caught that one.
it'll never be Steve Zuckerberg, right? Like, no, but I just tell people it's a tool, man. It's a tool. It is a tool, and how you use it, it's just like a carpenter that uses a hammer versus a construction worker that uses a hammer. It's the same tool. They use it different ways, and who you are, like you said, like who you are as a person is going to determine how you use that tool, also, right? Um, so, so just use it with caution. I think, and I'm gonna tell this: stop watching movies. Stop watching
Mm,
TV shows, stop watching movies. As somebody who loves Star Trek and loved all these things, the whole AI conversation has made me Matrix. I used to love the movie The Matrix. I can't even
mm,
watch it anymore because
mm,
of people in their conversations about technology. I can't enjoy it anymore because it's just like I see where people are getting these ideas from, and their fit. And you also gotta recognize at what point is when you what the point position you're taking it. When is it coming from a position of fear, and when
mm,
is it coming from a position of knowledge?
mhm,
Because a
mm,
lot of times, as yes, I am telling people to stop watching movies because they ruin the experience for people like myself who enjoy it. But I'm going to get off that soapbox. But as somebody who programs and understands, like a lot of times, these products that we're using are failing more than they're working properly,
Mhm.
because of bugs. You know, I can understand, and because I have access to people who are actually working on the project. I understand. I have a better understanding, and to be fair, I have I'm not gonna say it's a good understanding. I'm still learning myself because it's very complicated. But you do have to stop yourself and say, when is this coming from the influence of things I grew up on, and just the
Mm.
whole Isaac Asimov, uh, thought process of what he talks about with robots and stuff. Which,
Yeah.
to be fair, I'm not. There's a lot that's true in what he talked about and wrote
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it influenced the technology that we use today because a lot of
100%.
but you have to decide, where is this position I'm taking coming from fear? Is it because I'm scared that it's going to take away my job? Is it out of fear? Which in a lot of cases it will.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Mhm.
that's a valid. And I'm not saying your fear is not valid, but
Mhm.
in this space of when you're using it as a tool for yourself to help you achieve your goals, you have to recognize that there might be some of your apprehension is coming from just a place of fear or lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
even myself included, I have to stop myself and ask myself sometimes, like, you know, am I, I challenge myself ethically about how I go about using certain things. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an important topic and an important perspective that, um, as you as a leader and potential podcaster you need to think about because and I said it jokingly, but I'm I'm sort of serious when I think about when I hear and I see everybody position themselves as a thought leader and whether it's on whatever platform it could be on, right? And I'm not knocking the idea of thought leadership because I do have my own thought leadership. Uh, and it is more along the lines of how do you how do you make that part of your ethos, right? So if I go back and talk about like when I started the podcast, retail leadership with Steve Worthy, I fought against doing something this way for that way going left for a long time until it was brought to my attention of like this is actually your lane, and I haven't deviated from that thing, and I won't deviate from that because that's part of who I am. It's
Right.
part of what you see is what you get with Steve. The conversations that I have on podcasts is the same conversations I'll have with you in a coaching session, a training session, or on stage, and it's the same. And I'll deliver it in the same sort of like I don't give a crap mentality, and I want you to learn something, and I want you to do something, right, with this. So while we're having this conversation about AI, you have to create um, your own ethos and values. I always talk about the context of values, right? What values do you are most important to you that you want to share? Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to share those values, but over time, those are the things that you want to make sure that that you're purporting and that you stand by, right? AI can help you accelerate the thought processes around those values, but they can never replace you in the context of how you deliver your thoughts and who you are and how you present yourself.
Right. That's the human experience, right? We're all individuals. We all have different experiences and views. And, they can't be diminished just simply because no matter what you think, even if you're replacing your job by AI,
Hmm.
that doesn't determine the value of who you are. And it's Darwinism. You got to figure out how to adapt or die. And I think
Yeah,
us
yeah,
being in this
yeah,
space right now where we're at, we have the opportunity to shape the future of it by becoming the ones that figure out how to adapt to it.
yeah,
Um, my kids, my grandkids, they're gonna. This is their life, right?
yeah, yeah.
We remember it's the digital native versus digital immigrant argument, right? Or that's not, it's not necessarily argument. It's the theory of it, right? Um, my oldest son probably remembers, he's born on the cusp of the internet, right?
Yeah.
1999.
Mm.
But my daughter's she's 11 years old. This is all she knows. So,
Yeah, yeah.
her fears are not going to be the same as mine. Plus,
Mm-mm.
she didn't grow up watching The Matrix. So,
You going back to the Matrix? Now I'm gonna force you
Yo.
to. I'm force you to watch the Matrix tonight, man. You need to go ahead and watch it. But it's true. I mean, I'm gonna just say it. I don't care. I grew up in the best era because I am of a certain age where I saw the first. I don't get. Now I'm not the boomer yet. I'm not there. I'm not there. I saw the first computer. House phones. I saw the first cell phones, answer machines. I mean, tapes,
VCRs.
VCRs, CDs. And now here we are in the world. We're talking about AI. I mean, I've seen it all. I have literally seen it all. And
Steve remembers when there was no TV and there was only the radio.
I don't know. No, I
He was
don't
there for
remember that.
that.
I'm not that far back. But I do remember the radio shows. Yeah, as a family, we did. Certain shows came on at night.
Wall
You
set
would,
the first
you
fire.
would,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
The first fire. That's messed up, Walk. That's messed up. The first fire. I invented fire. There you
That was a
go.
good one.
That was a good one. That was a good one. That was a good one. But yeah, I think it's I've had to adapt. I mean, when I say adapt, it's ridiculous of how many things I've had to adapt to in my life. Um, it's mind numbing to just to think back around like printers, dot matrix printers, and just I mean I know I'm belaboring beating this horse to death, but what I mean is that if we have to evolve, we have to change, we have to learn how to deal with these things that are actually in front of us because if we don't, they're going to deal with us. So we're forced to. So, yeah, I'm of a generation like just bring it on, man. It is what it is.
We
Like
have
I
to.
can't.
My friend and I have this conversation a lot because, like, my great grandfather died when he was 92, and that was in the 80s. And sometimes I have to look at things and put it in perspective in that capacity. My grandmother was in her 90s when she passed away. She was born in the early 1900s. And my friend and I talk about this, and we talk about in the past 120 years, we've had probably the most technological advancements in
Yeah,
human history, right?
yeah.
We went from riding horses to driving cars to flying jets to nuclear bombs to
Come on, man.
electricity to
Come on.
plumb. Like you got to think about it. So it's almost a natural evolution. But I want to make this one point. And speaking of that dystopian, futures and stuff, one of my favorite books and movies is Dune. And a lot,
Yeah, yeah,
everybody when you
yeah.
watch these movies, you don't get the real premise of why
No,
Dune exists in the first
yeah,
place.
yeah,
The David Lynch edit has like 20 minutes, sets up the whole story of Dune. If you could get that copy, you'll love it if you like Dune. But the whole purpose of it was the reliance on technology and how humans we descended into this state of whatever,
hmm.
but then the pendulum swung back.
Yeah,
And I always tell people with humanity, it's always a pendulum, right?
100% agree.
Like horses didn't go extinct because we started using cars, right? People still use horses, people still ride horses. There's certain things, some things did disappear because that's just the natural evolution of it, but it is a pendulum. And part of being a human is the creativity side. So where it may seem like we're moving away from it, it's going to always come back because it's
Yeah,
such a part of who we are as human beings. It's always going to be a fight to not be creative.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
and I think that's the concern in the content creation space, in the art space, in the music space with AI.
yeah,
So I remember sampling was supposed to kill music,
yeah. Right.
right? Creative, but it didn't. You
Yeah.
started seeing musicians incorporating sampling into their workflow.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hip hop was original music. We go into sampling that, and part of it's because of the business of it, but also we're moving back into original forms of music in hip hop as well,
Yeah.
or a hybrid of hip hop of original pieces integrated with samplers. So we always adapt to find new ways to use these tools to
Yeah.
create new things and
Yeah.
create new creative aspects.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing I've learned as I was kind of harkening back to all of those different, inventions was that whenever something new comes out, we always over index initially. We always over index on, oh my gosh, this is a next best thing and things along that line. And then to your point of like the equilibrium, I always think it gets back to, you know, um,
It self corrects.
It self corrects. One, because you start to learn to live with whatever that new thing is, right? And you start to incorporate, like phones, right? I mean, how many of you out here are listening? How many of you still have a house phone? Right? I want to know who has it. You have a house phone, Corey?
No,
Like I don't. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like, when was the need for us to stop having a house phone? Right? I can't put a date on it. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know when that necessarily happened, but it did. It did occur where we've gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, you sure, definitely if your parents still have one. I hear it all the time when I'm up there. Like, can somebody answer that phone? Like, it's crazy. Um, and what is, I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, what is that? I said, that's their house phone. I said, they still have a house phone? It's crazy. But you see where you see where I'm going with that. Now it's at the point of now we're living in this state of like, where's my cell phone? Everything we do right now is on our cell phone. So the pendulum will swing, but it will also swing back where we start to learn how to live with whatever this new technology is, right? And I think that's where we have to be mindful and dare I say hopeful of when that pendulum starts to swing back and we get to this point of equilibrium around living with certain things. But the ones who adapt quicker are going to be the ones that are going to be living with it in more harmony, I believe, than those who are not. So that's my point.
here's the kicker. Here's the mind blowing part. Most of us have been living with AI since we were little kids.
100%. Yeah.
That's the crazy part. It's just now it's more out in the open. It's in a different form. It's more accessible and it's in a different form. But a lot of us have been living with AI for a very long time. Your refrigerators, certain systems like your light systems and stuff. A lot of that stuff has been using AI for as long as probably some probably using some form of AI since you were born.
Mm,
So so that's why I say sometimes you got to evaluate the fear because it's like some of it has been here so much you didn't even realize it,
yeah.
and now it's just this new tool and new way of executing it. Yes, I know. I'd say AI, but I know it's machine learning, and that's a trigger for me. But I've learned for the sake of conversation, thanks to podcasting, I've learned how to say things for sake of conversation and not allow words to trigger me.
Oh
Sometimes.
my gosh, this is a therapy session. Do you need to talk to your chat GPT after this, Corey?
I'll be like, it's LLMs, it's machine learning, it's not AI, it's nothing. But
Yeah, yeah.
but the general conversation is AI. But yes, we've been living with it a lot longer than you realize it. So so that's sometimes I wonder if the fear is actually really warranted or not.
Well, I think it's okay. I was listening to a comedian, and he was talking about like I'm going to continue to make this argument around like when we grew up was with the world wasn't as safe when we were growing up as a kid, like playing outside. And the comedian said, well, what about all, and then someone said, well, what about all the like crazy people that are out there, now? He said, you know what? They were out there back in the day. We just didn't know who they were, right? They're driving, you know how it was. You
He was
was
just
driving,
special. He was
you
just
was,
special.
but you're driving down the block and you saw that panel van as a kid growing up in the, late 70s, 80s. You're like, that van does not belong in this block. And you just do it. Those people, that situation existed back then. It just wasn't as pronounced as it is today.
Right.
I'm thinking about in the context of this AI, right? Always things get more pronounced when there's more money involved in it, right? When the powers that be are making more money, then guess what? It gets pushed to the front of the line because there's more money to be made. This is how I honestly feel when the money, I won't say the money is going to dry up, but when the money becomes less pronounced, because once again, there's going to be equilibrium that takes place when it comes to this AI proliferation that's out there, and companies are going to start to catch up with each other, right? And then guess what? Now everybody's gonna have it. It's like that. It's like that. Okay, I'm dating myself again. Remember the movie Incredibles, and the one guy's he was the bad guy with the red hair, and I can't remember his name because he wanted everybody to have superpowers. He said because when everybody is super, no one will be. And I remember that as watching that movie years ago with my kids, and I was like, "That's such a profound line." No one in a kids movie, but it's the same thing when everybody has AI and they're all thinking about it. Guess what? And they're advanced. Nobody's going to be advanced. It's all going to be part of the same pile. And I'm going to stand on that word right there. What is
Just
Sharon
going
saying?
in. And I mean, that's a valid point, Shay. She says, remember when you could identify this somebody who was not well talked. I can't see because of
Oh
the
yeah.
way that the
Mhm.
text read it, Steve, because the text on my screen is off way
Remember
to
when
the
you
screen.
could identify to someone who was not well, talking to all his friends out loud? Now we assume he's on the phone. Yeah, yeah. Like you're walking and talking, right? You know, the streets of New York. You see somebody walking, you're like, oh, okay, all right. You go to the other side of the street. Nowadays, they got their earbuds in, so you just assume nowadays, they're talking to somebody. Guess what? They probably not. So it is just this form of equilibrium of how we learn how to deal with and live with different things that it's actually going to be taking place.
But back to the point, right? Like with the content creation, again, just remember it's a tool. Um, I know people who still have successful copywriting businesses. Yes, did it hurt because of the AI,
Hmm. Hmm.
but they've learned to integrate the AI into their business format. And because they have that skill set, they can use AI way differently than I do when it comes to writing and
Yeah,
copywriting and stuff. So,
yeah.
so it's yes, is it a threat to people's jobs and businesses? Yes, that's very valid. A very valid concern, and it's going to happen, especially like certain things that are repetitive jobs that can be easily done through robotics and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
mean, we learned that with the car industry. Nobody complains now about the AI in car industries, right? But I remember in the late '80s, early '90s when they started adding robots. That was the biggest fear.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I just say like when you're doing your content creation space, if you need to create an ethical or core values on how you want to use it, then do that for yourself and make
Mm.
sure that the
Mm.
people on your team are adhering to that, right? There is a responsibility you have. I was watching this lawyer on music where she was talking about a client hired somebody on Fiverr to do some work on their music. Come to find out, the client was like, something's not right here. She ran it through an AI generator and found out the person that they hired used Sora.
Mm.
I shared the video on my threads, but
Mhm.
now they have a lawsuit against that person because you're affecting somebody's product who
Yeah.
hired you for something specifically. And you try to use AI, which
Mm.
creates a whole nightmare for them with the copywriting, ownership, all
Yeah.
that stuff. So like you have to make sure that yes, if you hiring people that they hold the same ethical regard, or
Yeah.
that so yes, AI does complicate things because now we have to police the work that if we hire people to do work for us, we do have to, but I think that's a conversation you need to be aware of in the beginning. And that's where contract, all that stuff comes into
Yeah.
play. You
Yeah.
handle your business. But if you have a very strong ethical thing about it, make sure that you adhere to it and the people around you adhere to it as well. I think some of the responses I see about AI, like the nose cutting off despite the face type of
Yeah.
attitude,
Right.
where it's just like outright you're just pushing it away. But it's here, it's not going anywhere. Now
Mhm.
you just need
Mhm.
to figure out how to use it to help you execute whatever it is you need to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
It
not
does not
going anywhere.
absolve your responsibility of being a part of the process and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and policing it and curating it and putting out content that is part of your brand. So I'll say that it does not, just because you use it does not absolve you of your responsibility to your audience, to your clients, to whatever you're using it for,
Mhm.
of you making sure that it's up to your standard and it's your voice and it's your content.
Yeah. I would dare say that it's even more so, right? I think the table stakes have gotten even higher for that authenticity that you spoke about, for that um integrity of who you are and what you want to present and what you want to talk about. I think it's even increased even more because it's getting more difficult to um to
It's an opportunity for
distinguish.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yes, but I think but I still think that's where, I don't know, it was you and I, or maybe it was Walter, I don't know, a while ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I was talking about the context of like, people are still going to want human connection and human interaction um, get that's just the name of the game. People are still going to want that, and so how do you, even like from a community standpoint, like you just said, earlier, you said I can't even say that the BPA is online, right? Because you have online and offline. You're just a community, and
Right.
that dare I say that human side of what you do is probably even more important, right? Those opportunities where people can come together and talk and exchange ideas is almost probably more important than what you probably put out there, whether it's from a post. You probably get more engagement, of course, in real life than you do when you put something maybe out there in a post within the community. And so I think that's where we have to understand, and we have to make sure that while this equilibrium is going to swing, you still have to educate yourself and actually become even more authentic and share more about who you are, so that you can distinguish yourself from all of the other people that are going to be out there in your space.
I will always use the fear of anything that when I see people getting scared of a particular tool or product or something, I
Yeah.
always use I always use and what It's a Wonderful Life, that was part of the premise with George
Mm,
Bailey and Mr. Potter, was when everybody else was panicking, they kept cool heads will always prevail. They didn't panic, and that was the whole contention of their
yeah.
relationship from that point on, from his youth until he became an older person, right? Is you hear about this in business or in stock markets, right? When everybody's panicking, it's when you buy, right? When everything's selling, you buy.
Hmm.
Like when the market crashed, the housing market crashed back in '09, it was
Yeah.
people who were buying up all that stuff that are now
Mhm.
billionaires and billionaires, right? Like
Right.
it made them more richer. During COVID, we saw that clear as day in COVID, where everybody was panicking. These companies were snatching up houses, they were doing all these different things, and then when the market shifted,
Somebody
their
benefit
pockets
from it.
exploded, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I look at the AI stuff like that. So like the more we cry about we're gonna lose human connection, is more of an opportunity to start uh establishing the foundation of human connection in what
Yes.
you're doing.
Yes. 100%. 100%. Because when
So
that pendulum swings back,
you're
who's
you
gonna be
have
who you got
you're,
you're already positioned.
you're prepared
Yeah.
for it.
Yes. Yes.
And that was the thing with COVID, right? So like everybody wanted to get back out. So anybody who started really putting together events at that timeline where, especially like here in New York City, where we were coming out of the shutdown and everybody wanted to go outside and play and party, those people made a lot of money.
Mhm.
They made
Yeah.
a lot of money off that stuff, and then it started to level out. But the point is that when everybody's panicking and getting crazy, it's interesting that Sam Altman said what he said about ChatGPT, but yet he's over here with the product,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, the race you see in the AI space with everybody trying to come out with their own models and all this stuff is that everybody's trying to position themselves for when it does plateau
Yeah.
to have that position. So
Yes.
while we're as a consumers panicking, they're preparing for when they're preparing for that moment for when we
Mhm.
stop panicking, and now it's just part of everybody's lives, and now we're willing to pay for the product
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
without issue. So it's the same thing. You could take that same mentality in what you're doing with this content creation space and say, no, I'm not saying you should ignore the fears and the conversations and that are happening, but you should be able to say, if everybody's complaining about the human component being missed out, then how can I capitalize off of providing that to my audience?
100%.
That's why
100%.
podcast tours are the money's drying up on the ad side, but podcast tours are creating a lot of revenue for people
Yes,
because
indeed.
the people want to be able to go see their favorite, meet, interact, and see their favorite podcaster. That
Yeah.
that part will never die.
Yeah.
Towards the music, it's crazy. Economy going bad, but
But
artists are still
tours,
making
come on,
freaking money off of tours, which is
music
why you see
tours.
so many older artists coming out of retirement to do their farewell tours.
Yeah. 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 People want people need people engagement, right? You need that
So
engagement. You
yeah,
need that connection, right? And there and that's, I mean, I guess that's sort of the through line of everything that Corey and I, have been talking about today, is that I know we've gone off a couple of different tangents, but that's what we do. But the through line is always about, how do you, as a leader, if you're thinking about doing a podcast or or even being a guest on a podcast, maybe that's a whole nother episode too. And how you need to articulate your value, who you are, and what you want to say and what you want to do, is how do you just make sure that you're human? throughout this process because people want to connect with people, right? People want to do business with people. And I think we lose that sometimes in how we see the world, how we think about the world, maybe how we move, maybe to Corey's point around the fear. How do you lean into maybe the opposite of that? You have to own, you know, your position and who you are. If you're fearful of it, then maybe you have to get over that. And how do you apply something different to your life? Because there's a lot of space and there's a lot of opportunity that's out here in the podcast space for you to own your position. For you to own your position. Retail leadership with Steve Worthy. Um, there is not another podcast out there that deal in retail that deals specifically with retail leadership. They all deal with the industry at large. None of them, they may have retail leaders on their shows talking about their companies and their specific things, but I'm talking about the aspect of pure
Right.
leadership. And I'm going to continue to own that space. So you have to think about it in your context of like, what space do you want to own and lean into that as well, Corey? What?
And
Well,
you don't need a
go
million
ahead.
downloads to do that.
You don't. You don't. You don't. You don't. You don't. And I mean, we could talk about thought leadership and like owning that space, but we've already, hopefully, you've been able to sense some of this throughout the entire time we've been speaking. Corey, what's the last thing you want to leave somebody with, and then we're gonna get them on out of here and get them back to their afternoon. We've been on 2 hours, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's past your bedtime.
I know my nap time's coming up, man. Yeah, yeah. Let me go. Nah.
Um, Last thing, I mean, we touched a lot of stuff that I probably would have left people with. I would just say, if you want to start a podcast, don't do it. Not playing. I think the biggest thing I think you want to do is be yourself, right? At the end of the day, part of being a leader is being who you are, being comfortable with who you are. Um, yes, listen to the experts. Yes, listen to the new, like, study, become good at proficient in this space if you want to do a podcast. But remember, it's your podcast. It's how you want to do it. Um,
Mhm.
but so don't figure out figure out who you want to be in this space. Don't try to be like everybody else. That's
Yeah.
what I want to leave people with.
Yeah.
Um, be creative and be be who you want to be in this space.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. I think I wrote this down earlier because I wanted to say it, but I think I'm going to leave it to the end here. It's like you don't need anyone else to green light like your podcast, right? You don't need any authority figure to say do your podcast. You don't need any collaboration. You don't need the powers that be at work. You don't need anybody to green light your podcast because it's your podcast. Understand that and think about it in that context. This podcast is yours. You control the production, you control the content, you control the distribution, you control the ideas, you control the engagement, you control it all. That's the one thing there's several things that I love about podcasting is like I control all of this. All of it. Whether I want to have a sponsor or not, I can control that. Period. Period. Right? And that's an amazing feeling to be able to have to realize that you are controlling this aspect of who you are and what you want to put out there. Like no one else. No one has to green light. I don't need Corey's approval. I don't need anybody's approval to say what it is that I want to say. Yeah, I know that's right. I don't need Corey's approval. Right? So I really hope everybody was able to get something out of this. You can of course connect with Corey if you want to follow his podcast and not podcast his newsletter. It's a dope newsletter, really dope newsletter. So extremely informative. Everybody just go ahead and make sure you connect with Corey, and then those who have connected with me and Worthy Retail Leadership, our newsletter here on Substack as well too. Any final words, Corey?
Yeah, you can go to blackpodcastassociation.com to learn more about what we do. It's also on social media, Black Podcast Association. We have different things, so just do a search and subscribe to Black Pod News, blkpodnews.com.
Where's Corey?
Steve,
Where's
yeah, Steve was gonna plug his stuff, but he wasn't gonna let me plug my socials and had to reach out. Yeah, reach out to Corey, but I'm not gonna tell you that. And my name's Corey Gums. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Like, like anybody in the industry could tell you I'm pretty approachable.
Hold on for a second. Would you just say you're approachable?
I said I'm pretty approachable. Yes, I am approachable. Steve, don't hate now, bro. We had a good show.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
not
man.
approachable to Steve.
No, you were down here, and Corey was down here in Atlanta last weekend, right? It was last weekend. Yeah, last weekend, and we got to we got to connect and go out to dinner, have a couple of drinks and stuff like that. It was good having you down here, man. And then Sunday, me, you, and Walt went over to my Starbucks. And the one whenever I'm posting on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, on IG, I got this little spot in my Starbucks that I don't want anybody in. But Corey and Walt was able to kind of they were like, oh, this is actually a really dope spot. I was like, yeah, it's like one of the best spots in any Starbucks that you're away from everybody else and no one wants to see it. So it was kind of cool to have you guys down, and we were all just working and hanging out, man. So appreciate you, man. Love everything you're doing, and we always there to support each other.
The opportunity to be here, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I know people are going to get a lot out of this, and whether it's during this or in the replay. So we're going to let everybody get back to their Sunday afternoon. Corey, always a pleasure, my friend.
Same here, bro. Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Peace.